My next guest is a friend of the show, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome back Graham Moore, the founder and leader of the English Constitution Party and the English Constitution Society. Graham, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Great to have you on. I mean, you've always got really interesting things to say, which, you're a teacher in a way. You teach me and you teach other people about what we don't know about the Constitution, which is a very, very important issue. But I know one thing you've been mentioning is something that happened at the weekend, because at the weekend there was some anti-monarchy protests on the first anniversary of King Charles' coronation. Um, and so, people have got different opinions about King Charles and so on. I mean, I'm not a big personal fan of him myself, but what do you make of these anti-monarchy protests? Do you think they're right, or do you think they're wrong? Or, is there some opinion in between that we should have about them?
The direct answer is I believe in separation of powers as the foundation of how our constitution works and operates. Our constitution is bound by oath. There are two oaths for the monarchy, the Accession Oath and the Coronation Oath Act. The problem when you get the current situation that we've got with this particular monarchy and this reign, meaning even prior to King Charles the Third, and I have to be very careful how I pronounce the last part of that. The point being, they have made themselves redundant, and in doing so, they have started to destroy the fabric of England. Because of their constitutional responsibility. So the answer to your question is constitutional responsibilities. And I'll give you an example of that, David. If you was employed and your contract with your employer, which is basically, in this case, the king is the people and the country, and you was to go through your contract and pass off all of your responsibilities to another area, so you had no responsibilities left, and what you was actually doing was looking very pretty with a crown with your family for tourist purposes, for example, or trade purposes. Both of them things are not really in the actual constitutional remit of the monarchy. Then you have made yourself and your family redundant. It's worse than redundancy, because what they've actually done is perjured their oath by passing off their prerogatives to another part, and it's actually caused problems for the justice of the country. That's why I believe they shouldn't exist anymore. If they don't want to carry out the prerogatives, then it needs to be an elected person, as it was in the Anglo-Saxon times. And if you actually watch the coronation, the election process is still there. So people don't understand the constitutional element of this. So just to make sure I nail this for everyone, I'm not saying I don't like King Charles as a person or his family as a person. I am saying there is a constitutional responsibility that they are completely reneging on, and that is why we should no longer have a monarchy. We've now got a Star Chamber. We've reverted back to it. Some people may call that, the modern term for a Star Chamber is a Politburo. In other words, Parliament is sovereign. In fact, in law, it is not. That's the point.
So what's the situation then? I mean, Charles the Third, King Charles the Third, as he's referred to, I guess has taken these oaths, hasn't he? He's taken the coronation oath and the accession oath. But are you saying he's actually not fulfilling what he's promised to do by oath?
Absolutely. So in law, and there is a distinction, that I'm about to say something. Many people confuse this word. In law, there is something called perjuring your oath. It is different to perjury in a court of law. Purging your oath is the equivalent of treason. It was taken very seriously. I mean, if you go back in our history, kings have actually begged forgiveness of the people. It literally, please do not chop off my head. I apologize and I will retake my oath, right? So, yeah, it's really important. Perjuring your oath is the absolute crime. There's other crimes on Halsbury's Laws of England, for example, contempt of sovereign, contempt of statute. These laws are still on our books and they shouldn't be removed because they're part of the foundation. Even Her Majesty the Queen in July 20th, 1988, made a declaration to both houses of Parliament that the Constitution and the English Bill of Rights is the foundation of our legal system and still law, right? And it was on the tricentenary of the English Bill of Rights that she made that declaration to the House. So people like King Charles and the monarchy, by passing off, this is the important part for people to remember, passing off prerogatives and giving prerogatives to another part of the separation of power is perjuring your oath, because you cannot protect what. So part of their function is to protect us. It is to protect us from the power of the judiciary and to protect us from the power of Parliament. And they are reneging in delivering that power for the people. And so I support, I must say this, I do not support a monarchy because they have perjured their oath. I believe we should have an elected president, but the full executive powers of the prerogatives should sit with the president. So in other words, to the people of this audience, if you was to petition the king should read it. In law currently, I've been arrested for petitioning the monarchy, and when it got to court, I was not only awarded costs, but 30 police officers, suddenly their cameras didn't work, and suddenly none of their statements would go to the judge because they all realised they had done something which is known in law as unconstitutional. And that is they'd arrested me.
Graham, this is really, really important stuff. I didn't know this, and it's always wonderful to have you on the show because every time you come on, I learn something new. We all learn something new, and perjuring your oath and how they've done this is something I'd like to get into a little bit more with you. But we're just going to take a quick news break first. We'll be back in a minute here on today's News Talk TNT. Graham Moore is with me, and we were just having a really important and interesting conversation about the monarchy and how the current monarchy has perjured their oath. Graham, welcome back to the show. I'd just like to ask you a little bit more about this. How exactly has the current monarch and perhaps the previous monarch, Queen Elizabeth, perjured his and their oaths? I mean, is it in terms of not taking up all the powers that they have, or is it also in terms of allowing some of these repugnant laws to come through, like the European Communities Act, which gives power away from the UK to the EU, for example?
That's an excellent question, and the answer is both of what you just said. So the key thing is that the monarchy hasn't carried out its actual function since 1849. It completely reneged on that. It relies on letters of patent. It relies on the House of Lords and nod through. They don't read the laws anymore, and it is their job to veto. It's a strong word. In America, they still use it. In the Congress, if they create a law, it goes to the executive, and the executive can veto the law if it thinks it's a bad law for the people. That still exists in law in England and Wales. It is never used. And they gave that prerogative away, basically, as a nod through to Parliament. That is a massive perjury and breach of their oath, because that function is there to protect us. So, like you just said, and a really important one was the European Communities Act of 1972, which was unlawful. It was against our constitution, against the English Bill of Rights, and most importantly, the Queen in that instance should have stepped in and said, "No, I veto this law, because you're handing sovereignty of my realm and the people who are sovereign to a foreign to foreign governance, and that's not allowed." So, just to give you an example, I believe it was in 2002, the Magna Carta Society actually, with a barrister, a real barrister, a practicing barrister at the time, created Article 61 as a document under the Magna Carta, and put it to a quorum of lords. A number of lords listened to the arguments. 4 of them signed it. They took it to the palace, and the palace had 49 days to reply. If people think that Article 61 doesn't still exist under the Magna Carta, think again. You can read the Telegraph articles about that situation, and you can also watch a video with the Lord Chief Justice at the time, Lord Judge, explaining Article 61 of the Magna Carta, and he said it's still very much law. So people need to understand our Constitution is crucial, it is valid, and it is important. And the reason why it isn't codified like the American Constitution is because the country of America is a lot younger than England. And they took almost in its entirety the English Constitution, codified it for them. We didn't need the codified version that the Americans have got, because it is written and codified in separate documents. England is 1,096 years old.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree with that. And one of the things that some people say, even on the right of politics, which I don't agree with, is that we need a whole new Bill of Rights and we need a new written constitution. I think, well, maybe in theory, that might work, but I don't think so. We don't need it, because we are not another country. And the thing is, who would write it? Because it would get written by all of these cultural Marxist activists.
You've absolutely nailed it. You've nailed it. Who would write it? That's the problem. And what they're trying to do is force that to happen. And by keeping the people of England and Wales particularly, and Scots, in ignorance. That's what they're doing, keeping you in ignorance. And if you read the Acts of Union, it actually says these rights must be communicated to the people. Where do you think the Americans got "we the people" from? The document that they hand out to all new citizens and anyone who takes the pledge. It comes from England. And the beauty of our Constitution is the power of separations. So you're right in what you're saying. Again, the 2 questions you've just put are bang on. But there has to be a penalty. If there's no penalty, if there is no accountability, personal accountability, even to the king, even to the monarchy, right? You've got serious problems, because the rest of the country falls to bits. The oath system. So I did mention during the break, none of this is fantasy. All of this is absolutely correct. And there's a document I've got in front of me, and it's called "The Oaths and Vows That Bind Our Society Together" by David J. Webb. And he's from a group of people called the Libertarian Alliance. For life, liberty, and property. By the way, people, these are professors who have written this. These are academics that understand, and the particular person that wrote this document, and it is absolutely a fantastic read, used to be a Marxist. And now he writes about the Constitution and tells people that how important for social justice the Constitution of England is. Believe it, he completely reversed these Marxist ideas.
Fantastic. It is the best constitution, I think. It is a fantastic constitution. The only trouble is hardly anybody knows about it, and the people in power ignore it and suppress it. And we need to really get this back and start operating according to our constitution. I think the first step to do this is increasing the knowledge of what it is, how it works, and how it could secure our freedoms and human rights and justice and prosperity if we got back to that. Graham, thank you so much for joining me on the show again. Always fantastic to talk to you, and I'm sure you'll be on again sometime soon, and we'll learn much more from you about this topic.